So who has experience in Polymer? A quick hands. Who's worked with Polymer? Cool, that's not a lot of people. That's really nice. So actually I have a second presentation for that. So that was actually what I was hoping on. So we have web components and Polymer, which are intertwined a bit, which is really interesting. So I'll do this really quick, by the way. It's just a couple of minutes. So web components is the official standard. It's been a lot of browser vendors are actually implementing it right now, and this is how everyone should create their components. Mind that bit. It consists of custom elements, which is like I can create a new image tag, but then different video or like Apple's new live image or something. It allows for HTML imports, like the stuff that pretty much every language has except for HTML. It has templates, which is pretty cool to use, which allows you to build professional applications in HTML. And it has Shadow DOM. And the Shadow DOM is the thing that makes everything tick for web components. So how do you use web components? Really quickly, it's just how do you get started? You implement the script web components. It's a polyfill, and you can just start using a random component by importing it through a link rel import tag. And so this is web components, pretty cool. How do you create one? Well, it's for me personally, this doesn't feel intuitive. It's a lot of JavaScript to create a component. For me, it was like when I saw it, what the fuck? So this is how everyone should create their components. Well, sort of. Browser support is actually getting really good now. IE Edge is working on browser support, which is really cool, which will make the web a lot better place. So onto Polymer. What is Polymer? Well, more or less, it's in a simple sense, I would say the savior in a world of weird web components. Polymer is a library. Polymer library is light with serial layer on top of the web components API, and that I'll show you with a for you probably familiar diagram. So it's a serial layer. It allows you to create custom elements, but in a more intuitive way. You can still create natively your own custom elements if it doesn't suit your needs. If you can use it together with other custom elements, but it allows you to, in a more intuitive way, build your web components. So using it, Polymer puts everything in HTML tags, which requires a bit of getting used to. For example, they put an AJAX request in an HTML element as well, which is, if you get used to it, it's cool. And the thing is, so how do I create one? This feels a lot more intuitive. It's a bit like React. You have one HTML file, which probably all designers know. You have your styles, your template, and your script in one file. It's one component. Everything is in there. The whole behavior. If you remove it, the whole component is gone. For me, it feels a lot more intuitive to build in this way your components. So that was really quickly an introduction to web components Polymer. But if you build components, there's a thing like nowadays with responsiveness and stuff. So let's quickly dive in a bit of history. It was coined by Eden McCott back in 2010, and it was talking about like how great would it be if a website could respond to their allowed size, the device size, the available size on the website. So it became a standard in 2010, and just a bit later, people started questioning already the media queries. It was that time that media queries got really big, 2012, 2013. Everyone started using them, and nowadays it's a standard. Everyone is using them, right? But the problem is, by now, media queries are already broken. Well, for a component-based internet, they're already broken. So take a simple element. It has some children in it, and with normal media queries, if the website gets bigger, I can allow for extra elements next to each other. But this is fine. But what happens when I introduce an element next to it? I have to make an exclusion, like, oh wait, there's an element next to it, so I have to write a different rule. And with media queries, that doesn't really make sense, as the size is based on the element, on the browser size. It's not based on the element. So if you create another element next to it, that's a bit of a different size. You actually have to create another exclusion. The cool thing is that, as I just explained, Polymer is component-based. You can write components, and they have all of the code in there. They have everything contained, all of the styles, scripts. So media queries should actually move to element queries. That's about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, Tab Atkins, one of the guys at Google and at the browser, at the specs, the defaults. It's a really good post on element queries. People were talking about like, oh man, how should we do this? So basic component of elements, but the thing is, an element query only looks at the element itself. So if you introduce another element next to it, doesn't really matter. It's like, oh, sure, I'm this wide, so I'll have this amount of elements next to each other. And oh wait, I'm smaller, sure, I'll have less elements next to it. So that's something that's really interesting. And in my opinion, it's designed for the modern web. As we use components everywhere, we implement them in different places. But they have a couple of pitfalls. The thing is circularity. That's the big issue right now. So in JavaScript, there are already polyfills made for element queries, which is they work actually really well. For Polymer, there's already a polyfill. There's already an element made to do element queries. But for now, you have to keep in mind that if you use this element, your browser is. I mean, the element itself is 400 pixels wide. It'll have just a normal styling, but the moment the element gets bigger than 500 pixels, then it'll state its width is 200 pixels, and it'll bounce back and forth between the usual fluid width and the fixed width, because it has more space. So this is an easy thing to fix. You'll probably never use this, right? But it gets a bit more interesting when you use EMs. This is something you might want to use, which is a viable thing. Like, oh wait, if I have more space, I want to be bigger, or the other way around. So that needs a couple of reflows to be able to parse. Good. But this is the example that Tab Atkins gives. If you float an element, a child in it is 500 pixels, and then if you make if the container, yeah. So it's the same thing basically as the first example I gave. If the container grows bigger, the child will grow smaller after all. For example, if you have a couple of elements next to each other. So the thing you have to keep in mind with using element queries is that whenever you use them, make sure that they never specify the element, or they never influence the parents with. That's the main thing to keep in mind. And so element queries wasn't really the right name, as elements themselves, with circularity, it got a bit of an issue. So there's a couple of guys working on container queries right now, and the whole point of my talk right now is that I want you guys to get involved if you're interested in getting element queries or container queries, just a different name, in the world of web. Actually having something in your CSS that allows you to only in an isolated way respond to what your element does, which allows for really create a really fluid world. So there's a forum where a lot of guys are talking about the standards, like how should we implement this stuff. And this URL is a place where, for example, Tab Atkins, where a lot of Googlers, where a lot of Facebook guys, or the other standards working groups are combined. If you share your opinion here, people actually listen. So do share your opinion on this, and that's the only way to actually push something like element queries forward. So I have a lot of useful links, but the slides will be up online, so you can actually check the links and browse around if you're interested in element queries.
We ask questions?
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Does this work with SAS, I suppose? Or
yeah, so,
did you try?
So it's, yeah, sure, SAS could, wait, so that's parsing. Probably SAS might say that it's not compatible, but a couple of the JavaScript libraries that right now implemented are using attributes on the container. And attribute selectors work in SAS, so yes, that'll work. As it's just CSS, select an attribute with, if you have your element query in there, that's what a couple of libraries will do. They are able to use attribute selectors to specify your responsiveness. So that works. Yes.
So does it mean that it is the same thing for all the CSS frameworks?
Yeah. So because it's just valid CSS, it always works, and it uses attributes. That's one of the approaches. There are a couple of different approaches between different JavaScript libraries that right now polyfill it. The standards aren't convinced about what they should do, so everyone's still free to just do whatever they want. So it's a polyfill if you've heard the idea. Anyone else?
Yeah. So because there is no standard yet, and you have dependency in your CSS on JavaScript. So your how does that work? Your CSS loads first, and have your pages kind of broken.
Yeah, performance-wise.
Well, not just performance, but how your page is rendered.
Flow interaction.
Yeah.
Like, first, your first bytes. With a lot of websites right now, JavaScript. Oh, that's if you don't really have server-side rendering right now. Because you're using an Angular or React without server-side rendering, it's not really an issue as JavaScript executes before actually rendering the page. But if you have server-side rendering, yes, it'll probably give you similar like Faut, flash of unstyled text. There will be a flash of unstyled layout. Probably yes, until the JavaScript executes. If you use the JavaScript library in your head, it might execute before actually rendering your elements. So that's a different approach you could use. That's it, I think.
Thank you very much.